A U.S. intelligence asset ran a banking empire on cocaine profits. Wall Street knew. Washington knew. It took a U.S. invasion to stop it. August 1983, Panama City. A banker named Ramon Iglesias sat in the offices of Banco Latinoamericano de Exportaciones, Bladex, and processed a wire transfer. The money came from shell companies in Miami. The destination, accounts scattered across the Caribbean. No one in the transaction chain asked hard questions. That was the point. Iglesias wasn't acting alone. He was facilitating a system. The money flowing through his hands belonged to a man named Manuel Noriega, Panama's military strongman, and crucially, a paid CIA asset. Noriega had been on the agency's payroll since the mid-1950s. By the early 1980s, he was also one of Latin America's largest cocaine traffickers. The CIA had a problem. Their asset was dirty, but he was also useful. Noriega controlled the Panama Canal, geopolitically critical. He suppressed leftist movements in Central America, and he provided intelligence on Soviet activity in the region. Firing him would lose all three, so the agency made a calculation. They'd look away. But looking away required infrastructure. Noriega's cocaine profits, estimated at $200 million annually by the mid-1980s, couldn't stay in duffel bags. They needed to be laundered, cleaned, deposited into legitimate banks where they'd become indistinguishable from legal money. That's where Wall Street entered the story. March 1986, Miami. A DEA informant walked into the Miami field office with a ledger. The document detailed deposits at BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. BCCI was the pipeline. Colombian cartels used it. So did Noriega. The bank had branches in 69 countries. It moved money with almost no questions asked. What the DEA agent didn't know yet was that BCCI owners had ties to intelligence agencies across the Middle East and South Asia. Pakistani intelligence had invested, Saudi royals had invested, and American officials had been warned about the bank's practices years earlier. The warnings were filed, then ignored. The money moved in patterns. Cocaine sold in Miami, proceeds wired to Panama, deposited into BCCI accounts under shell company names, reinvested in real estate, casinos, and legitimate businesses. The cycle repeated thousands of times, each transaction small enough to avoid scrutiny. Collectively, it was billions. By 1987, U.S. Customs had compiled evidence. Noriega wasn't just using the system, he was directing it. Internal memos described him as a narcotics trafficker. The DEA had surveillance. The FBI had wiretaps, yet Noriega remained untouched. The CIA's protection held. What changed was politics. Ronald Reagan's administration faced pressure from Congress. The Iran-Contra scandal had exposed covert operations in Central America. Noriega had been useful for those operations, but usefulness has limits. By late 1988, the calculation shifted. December 20, 1989. Operation Just Cause began. 27,000 U.S. troops invaded Panama. The stated mission, capture Noriega and restore democracy. The unstated mission, eliminate a liability before he became a legal problem. Noriega had knowledge of CIA operations. Knowledge is dangerous when an asset stops being useful. Noriega fled. He hid in the Papal Nunciature, the Vatican's embassy in Panama City. For 10 days, U.S. forces surrounded the building. Psychological operations teams blasted rock music and warnings. On January 3, 1990, Noriega surrendered. He was extradited to Miami. The trial began in September. The prosecution presented evidence of drug trafficking, tons of cocaine, millions in laundered money. Noriega's lawyers argued entrapment, that the CIA had allowed the trafficking to continue. The judge limited that defense. Noriega was convicted on 8 counts. He received a 40-year sentence. But the CIA's role remained sealed. Congressional inquiries were launched. Subcommittees asked questions. How much did the agency know? When did they know it? Classified documents stayed classified. Witnesses cited national security. The full story never emerged into public record. BCCI collapsed in 1991. Regulators finally acted. The bank had facilitated $20 billion in illicit transactions, money laundering, narcotics trafficking, arms dealing, bribery of government officials across multiple nations. The institution that had been warned about for years was shut down. Thousands of depositors lost their savings. The Panamanian economy contracted. Unemployment spiked. Infrastructure was damaged. The invasion killed an estimated 3,000 civilians. Democracy was restored. Noriega remained in prison. The CIA's officers involved faced no prosecution, no dismissals. Some received promotions. The mechanics of the pipeline tell us something. Intelligence agencies, narcotics traffickers, and financial institutions can operate in parallel, not by accident. By design, the system works because accountability is distributed. DEA investigates, CIA denies, banks claim ignorance, Congress demands answers, decades pass, files remain sealed. Noriega was released in 2007. He was extradited to France on money laundering charges, then to Panama. He died in prison in 2017. By then, the Cold War had ended. The geopolitical value of his loyalty had evaporated, so had most public memory of how the system had protected him. This story matters not because it's unusual. It matters because it's typical. Asset protection, institutional silence, the gap between what regulators knew and what they acted on. Subscribe, because the next financial collapse always hides these same patterns waiting to be found. Subscribe, because the next financial collapse always hides these same patterns waiting to be found.